I like telling stories. I like listening to stories. I find that there's a lot to learn in hearing them and watching as their words come to life as visions dancing wildly in your head. But what I don't like is when stories aren't told the right way or portions are chopped out like sound bites on political campaigns. See, people here talk like they know the whole damn story. That the tiny peephole through which they gaze is all there is to the world, or that their vision, filtered by years of apathy and prejudice, dictate whole truths. Specifically, I've listened as storytellers pervert the realities of Haiti like false prophets making profit off the alleged perpetual violence and disarray, as I've had to stand victim to the things they say like, Haiti, yeah, that's the voodoo country, right? Yeah. That's the place where black people can't get their shit together. Don't go over there to South America, just donate money. It's not safe. And like the false prophets you are, you get others to believe in the webs you weave until Haiti's distorted story spreads like Black Death. And I'm not talking about the disease, but the historically evident movement that aims to silence all black bodies. But what you don't know, is that our bodies will not stay bound. You don't know that I am Negmaron, and with my machete, I will chop down the trauma that you've left to this land. You don't know that with the clatter of my broken chains that I sing and dance. You don't know. You do not know about the years of Jim Crow, spiritual discrimination, degradation, and occupation that's left us fighting with our bare hands, vulnerable to your prejudices and politics, replacing our rich tapestry with the most tarnished of fabrics. You don't even know what you don't know. Fools who dare mock a country that's had to draw the shorter straw in the past when you fail to grasp that atop the mountains of a hazy history sits a rising nation and resilient people so optimistic, you see the strength in their eyes. So end this toxic fixation that's given rise to this much indignation, because let me tell you something, Haiti is alive, and it's fighting. It's fighting because our arts paint the stories of our resilience, and we dance the songs of our brilliance. It's fighting to open the doors to reconnect with that broken history we left in 1804. It's fighting even if the whole world thinks us gone. So you must understand how angering it is to hear this venom slip from your lips, because you have it all wrong. You have it all wrong. Combating my own traumas, I grow tired. Tired of navigating this terrain that's exposed me to the idea of living on a plane where my very own existence runs counter to the values of society, that my being is a mistake, an egregious flaw by nature to create someone who just wants to be. I'm tired. Like Behemoth and Leviathan, my internal conflict rages inside of me, tossing and tearing and ripping at the fabrics of my reality, a tapestry woven by the delicate fingers of my parents, but lost to devils so evil and errant as to defile it. I want to give up. I want to give up. Soulame, I want to give up. I want to let my body ride that calm and peaceful sea and let its ebbs and flows take me to a place where I'm no longer binded by the shackles of pain. I want to give up. I cannot find it in me to resist, but I know that I must. I cannot swallow my pride and ask for help, but I know it must be done because all I've done up to now is run. I need help. I need her to come back to me, my Ezuli, someone who once told me that one day everything would be okay, but all I see is darkness and clouds. I need her. I need you. I need help. I need help. Charm and positivity that on the end of crossing its path you find your pot of gold, but for me For me, it's a journey. Its many colors pay homage to the many nations and spirits that guide us on this journey to healing and recovery, never failing to remind us that this journey we take is one of a collective resistance. A collective resistance that shows itself as we dance like wisps of flame, casting light on the untold stories, mute voices, and glories of nations and people overcome. And that one by one, those webs casted by those false prophets fall. They tremble and quake to our dancing twists and shake because they have no power here. Here, I can finally see my Haiti thrive. Here, my Ezra can return to me. As we embark on this journey from one end of the arc to the other, we finally overcome our trauma, be it political, social, economic, or even academic. Dancing then becomes our medium by which we shake ourselves of this pain, of this trauma. Dancing then becomes our transformation and our evolution. As a form of healing and recovery, dancing is transformative. It is sustaining. Dancing as a form of recovery becomes revolutionary.
Young D, Carrie Jen, you ready?
Won't fight by me, but Oluwa. Won't fight by no. You know what? You can't bring me down. No matter you try, you can't make me frown. I can never go down. Man, no get it, man, no get it, man, no get it. Oh, man, no get it, man, no get it, man, no get it. Oh, man, no get it, see, every time I get stronger, they want me kind die. They want control my life. You and Obi then give me life. They want me to frown. They want me kind die. Every day I dey go up, my brother. I don't go stop. God give me power to conquer my enemies, and I get the authority over principality. Oh Lord, come down. I manifest your power. Oh Lord, come down. I manifest your power. I say, man, no get it, man, no get it, man, no get it. Oh, they don't get it, they don't get it, they don't get it. Oh, see the girls from the dance get that. For your house you dey hear get that. See some of them do the dance get that. And my music dance get that. My mama they dance get that. See the children they dance get that. See the boys and girls dance get that. See, one break by me now, you know what? One break say me let's say oh Arukuba, nice. I'm a heck I see that. One say me let's say you must see the you progress and people they messy. Ice, because the member in the rest and they see you they want to be messy. We are ready, Gandhi, baby, you when I
So before I say a few words, I'd like to turn it over to my advisors who had the patience of working with me this entire semester to put this all together for you. So Sandy and Singham, please. Woo.
Welcome to the 62 Center Dance Studio. The first time I saw Veronique Ignace was actually right there. during First Days, she came to the dance studio for a placement class that the department was offering. And she looked extremely determined and very powerful and wise for her years. And over the course of the 4 years that it has been a real pleasure to know you, to work with you, to share some wisdoms with you, and to come to this point where you are moving beyond this room, and this room will move out into the world with you. Thank you very much for the gift of your talent over these 4 years. So this is an achievement for not only Vero, it's an achievement for everybody who's been on this journey together this semester. Vero endeavored to do this work actually a year ago, not just this year, but she's been thinking about this process for 2 years. And she's been envisioning how to process things that she loves and that are vital in her life. Vital to the core of her life is dance, inquiry, because she's also a science person, and a love of human beings, a real rich love of human beings. And so I see the process of working with us, working with her colleagues, our colleagues, with the musicians that she's brought in, thank you, as a process to affirm her journey and the journey that each young person you see on this arc here is in the act of processing their lives in this institution, in the world, and seeking their identity. One of the tools that dance offers every human being is a gift of self-affirmation every day. Why? Because a moving body connects you actually to the energies in the universe. You're processing, you're channeling, and it may sound mystical, but science has proved that this is true. That this is true. Back in 1963, Holland Dozier Holland, the great writing team for Motown, took a folk saying and made it into a hit for Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. It was this: I've got to dance to keep from crying. Some of you may remember that song. But for those of you who are not, it's not a deep song, it's not a profound song, but the name is. I've got to dance to keep from crying. And the Arc en Ciel, it's the vision of it, the research, the papers, and the processing brings me, I would say, back to that simple statement. Dancing affirms life, it affirms existence, and it connects you to other human beings because we're all in motion all the time, internally, externally, until we close our eyes, and then we become another form of existence. But it's all in motion. Thank you, Vero. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, so she's brilliant. She is. I'm very, I'm a big fan. And my hope is that the journey that she's been on with us and with her colleagues continues to bring something different into inquiry about the body and the possibilities of the body. Thank you.
I'm here with this. T-Boss, I like that your mother told me. Now I know what she is. T-Boss, she's my boss. You think I'm the boss? No, none of us are the bosses. She's the real boss behind all this. So Vero, and for all of you, I think this has been a real journey, especially for me. And it's the year of Haiti. I mean, Olivier and Isabel and Kirby and Vero and all of you. It's just so rich, and it's so wonderful to see all these students thriving and learning about and talking about and thinking about Haiti. So congratulations, all of you. But the thing that's most interesting about Vero's thesis for us is that it really is the first of a kind for Africana Studies. We're a relatively new program at last. And you know, this is the first time that we've had a dance performance as part of a senior thesis. It is one of 3 parts. So what you're seeing is in a sense only 1/3 of her thesis, and so we want her to talk a little bit about the other 2/3 as well. But it's more than just that 1/3, because the other 2 parts were ways of thinking about and preparing for and being part of this great grand production and finale at the end. And I was just going to say that, I mean, it's Sandy, this is sort of a dream come true for us, because it's sort of what we've been trying to plan for almost 30 years now, both building an Africana Studies program and finally having this kind of interdisciplinary work that is pulling together so much richness from our students, from our professors, from our community. And so the only other thing to say, because she's going to speak about those other 2 parts, is this was a real journey for me. The dance part I love, and I sort of, you know, have been around and seen them all the time. But the other 2 parts were really brand new to me, especially in terms of trauma. It's something sort of I've known about, but I never really understood in either an academic sense in terms of trauma studies and what it means and what trauma entails, but also really never learned about it so poignantly and so strongly as I have from Vero in terms of what it means to be a Black student at Williams College and a Haitian student at Williams College. She has taught me an enormous amount, so I've actually been the learner, and she has been T-Boss with me in terms of trauma studies, and I thank her very much for that, and I think she will teach us all about her trauma studies, and most importantly, though, about the recovery which she has managed to fashion for herself and for her friends, I hope with her friends, for her community, and for all of us. So, congratulations.
So, before I start, you guys have the bar. Okay. So it's really uncomfortable for me to be standing here and speaking after performance, because it's not something that we ever do, ever. So bear with me, because I'm going to try to speak and read, because there are a lot of things that I do want to make sure that I say regarding my thesis, but I don't want to leave them out. Because I'm also really excited to hear what questions you have for me with regards to what you saw. So I will say that what you just witnessed was my attempt to communicate through dance and through creative production the processes of trauma and recovery, which characterize my individual experience being a Black student learning and living at a predominantly white college like Williams, but also my way to document the experiences of all of the people who you see here. And so in some ways, their experiences parallel mine, and in other ways, they most definitely do not, because not everyone who's performed here is Black at Williams. But still, we were able to find common ground, because the experience of the student at Williams is still traumatic. So the impetus for my entire dossier came from reading a path-breaking book in the field of trauma studies. It's actually a book that sort of changed the trauma studies community by Judith Herman, MD, called Trauma and Recovery. And I read it in a tutorial that I took with Professor Joy James called Race and Sexual Violence, which I took because Professor R&B told me to take it. So thank you. And so in that book, Judith Herman was attempting to trace trauma as a form of political terror. So what struck me about that book is that she didn't talk about Black people at all, like at all. What she was able to do was to chart the experiences of soldiers, veterans who had suffered from shell shock. And she refers to that as a political terror. But she also talks about civilians who experience rape, which she considers a private terror, which, you know, that could be another thing. So she identifies, though, that the similarities between the two exists in the act of attempting to hide their existence, to not speak about them, right? Because the idea is that they're so terrifying that you don't want to utter that they exist. And she explains that the only way to come out of that trauma is to speak out on it in a public place and to do it through collectivity. And after reading that book, I couldn't help but think about how the silent and unspeakable nature of trauma seems just like the silent way in which students, especially here, are expected to conform and excel at Williams, seemingly exhibiting effortless perfection. So for all of us who are here, we know what effortless perfection is, and I am saying that that is the same exact thing, right? We're not speaking about what's hurting us. We're acting like it doesn't exist. And so I consider the hidden things that we students experience trying to make effortless perfection a reality: emotional scars, declining health, changes in personality, desperate searches for community, nasty and sometimes destructive infighting, and competition at the end of the day. And then I started to think, okay, well, what's particular about my experience as a Black student? We all share an effortless perfection, but there's something about being Black that makes it a little bit harder. And so by focusing on the experience of Black students at Williams, I was able to use my own experiences to make tangible the theories that I was trying to put forth in order to classify Black trauma by white academia, but then to explore recovery from that trauma. And I say classifying Black trauma as a term because Judith Herman's book didn't talk about Black people at all. And so Black trauma within the context of Williams, for me, is characterized by the competitive academic environment, which is defined by prestigiousness, legitimacy, wealth, and a hostile white gaze a lot of the times. And so for my 2 chapters, I use books by Saidiya Hartman and Joy Leary to explain that Black students come here already having been impacted by trauma of their history and of displacement. And displacement comes in part from our common African roots in the aftermath of a repressed history in slavery. But for students, African students and West Indian students who come here, it comes also from being displaced from home, leaving your home and your respective countries. So then added to the trauma of just being here is the ways in which the inevitable difficulties we face here allow those traumas to continue to fester. So part of the trauma of being at Williams is because we're taught to conform in very unthinking ways, to be accepted by and to get jobs in institutions and societies that in fact continue to traumatize Black people every day. And the events that we're seeing in Ferguson are telling of that. I also use a book by Paulo Freire where he talks about what's wrong with education in contemporary societies. And I used it as I struggled to find ways to emancipate myself from the traumas of my mainstream education. And so at the end of my first chapter, I suggest that for all students, and Black students especially, creative production informed by experiential living and deeply communal and collectiveness in its essence is necessary for survival, since it gives us the tools that stand outside of the structures of the individual, competitive, and cutthroat contemporary system. But my second chapter, it's titled Arc-en-Ciel, Creating and Recovering Haitian Dance for Survival. So just for your information, Arc-en-Ciel means rainbow. And that paper focuses on how I recover and how I continue to recover through movement, especially through creating and remembering and retelling and living my Haitian past in the present. It traces the development of this idea and explaining how I put together this final performance that you just saw, which is also my third chapter of my thesis. It integrates as well reflections on dance history pieces and people who have guided me, powerful artists like Bill T. Jones, Jean-Léo Destiné, Lavinia Williams, Catherine Dunham, and my mom, who's sitting right here. So, in creating and choreographing dance material, I've learned that the Black body is really a repository for movement, as confirmed by the traditions, religions, music, and dance that are in Africa and in the diaspora that are continuing to be performed and practiced today. Especially, my drummers here are from the Vodou religion of Haiti. It's my family as well. Maintaining all of these traditions requires community. And one of the most important takeaways I have with me, and I'll keep with me forever, is from a course that I took with JMB last semester. And we looked like an insightful essay by June Jordan, where she writes that the Black student clutches at family precisely at the moment when he enters the ultimate glorification of a society that has rejected him. Why is anyone amazed? So when I'm creating this work, my mission was to do it in such a way that embodies community. Is to do it in such a way that focuses on my time here at Williams and who I've been leaning on all 4 years, which are these people and some people in the crowd standing in the corner over there and sitting over here. But this is my family. And so the pieces that I create and how my pieces morph also depends on them and their experiences. And my entire dossier has been made possible because of their commitment and their time by Sika and my friends, my family, everyone you see. And so creating this work has been a journey. It's been a learning experience for us all. It's been also a bonding experience. And so this is concluding my presentation, but as you ask me questions, please also ask them questions and feel free to talk directly to them. I'm hoping to have this Q&A look kind of as like a talk back, what we say for dance people, is that you can call on one of them to answer your questions, especially if you think I'm lying. But that's it. Thank you.
My question is, did you always know that dance was your way of recovery, or was it from, because I knew you from dance for a long time, was it when you got into college where you were like, oh, the reason I've been dancing was to recover, as you would say, or were you just doing it
No, I've been dancing since then, but I would say that figuring out that dance was going to be my saving grace in a way, that was a process. So as Sandy mentioned, I started thinking about this since last year because that's when it started to become a project, but it actually started sophomore year. I was having difficulty figuring out how to be here, how to be 20, but also how to be someone who belongs to a tradition like this one that I've inherited from my mom. I didn't know how those two were supposed to coexist, especially being at Williams, where I felt like I was learning that it wasn't possible for them to coexist. And so that ended up morphing, and I grew, and it culminated in this, my senior year. Any other questions?
I have a question. What was your creative process like, and how did you begin choreographing your different performances?
So it's also multi-layered and also very difficult because each piece I really tried hard to get the people who perform with me to give me something. It was hard at first to have everyone in the room believe me, to say that yes, we go through trauma and you have experienced it too. That was really difficult. The first piece you saw, Yavalu, I had worked on. Kusika performed it during Clinton Williams, but they performed it in its more traditional sense of a dance that's pure, that's inviting. Whereas here we use it differently, and I asked them to reflect on themselves. It took actually one rehearsal to get everybody to believe me. We were in here doing work, rehearsal, and no one knew what we were supposed to do that day. We were supposed to be dancing, but we didn't dance. I took them through a workshop that culminated in everyone in tears. And they can talk a little bit about it, but everyone was in here screaming and yelling and freaking out. And there was no way to come back from that rehearsal, so we tried. I really tried hard to get them to be happier, but it didn't work out that way. So if any one of you guys want to talk about that experience, you can, but if you don't want to go there, you don't have to. So it was multi-layered. It was a day-by-day process, and it also depended on what I was getting from the people I was working with. Hi.
Beautiful energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To all of you, everyone here. I just wanted to ask, is this, well, a couple of things. Is this kind of the first experience of working with kind of this many people in this way? And also, because of the beautiful attention you pay to community in the way the performative nature happened, I really appreciated how you broke down the barriers of what a performance is, we might feel like for people. So thank you for doing that always. And so that being said, is it something you've done before? And also, how do you, if you don't mind me asking, how do you feel in the future in your life as you move forward from this place? How would you like to work with community? I just feel like it feels like it would be very important to you. I don't know, I don't want to assume, but please speak to that if you don't mind.
So working with this many people is, I'm used to that because Kusika is huge. Most of us are Kusika. I feel like we're missing people. So the difference is that I've never done it where I'm doing everything. Normally I'm a part of the group and I helped coordinate some things when I'm needed, but it's never been my show. And so it required a lot of thinking. I got a lot of questions from my advisors. Well, what about this? What about that? Do you think about this? Do you think about that? And most of the time I hadn't thought about it. Then I had to go, I thought about it, but I was lying. And so that was a new experience. Breaking down what a normal performance was looking like was very important to me, which is why we're not on main stage and we're in the dance studio. And for the last part of the question, yes, I do hope to work with community. I'm actually pre-med, and my goal is to be able to integrate both dance, this part of my life, with that. And so the title of my entire thesis is actually called Healing Through Dance. So an autobiographical journey of a Haitian woman at Lawrence College. But the idea is to create healing. And I don't see dance and medicine as two mutually exclusive things.
So I noticed in your pictures as well, you kind of moved from the dance studio space, like a similar space, to an outdoor area. And I wondered if in bringing this dance together, if you rehearsed or interacted with spaces other than like the dance studio.
As a group, no. I don't know if people have been dancing elsewhere, but something that I organized, no, we haven't. So I will let Bebe answer that question about why we were outside.
The photos, as you could probably tell, were in 3 parts of movement through 3 different emotional spaces as well as physical spaces. And the first setting, it struck me when Vera and I were first workshopping the idea of where this photo project would go, that Williams is sort of a white backdrop And so the first one wanted that white backdrop as well as black and white, and to move and finally get to color and outside and open space and water. And I found this outdoor location that kept everyone together because it was on a big rock, and that was a challenge. And these dancers are so talented. It was a pleasure creating with them. So it was this like really funny rock that they sort of moved around on and were forced to be together on. But I wanted us also outside after the first two parts were so constrained and against a harsh backdrop.
So I have a question. Is anybody confused about that last piece? About why that happened and why it was so random? Almost.
Actually, it wasn't confusion. As I was listening to the conversation, I was interested also in the dialogue. So you had dance, right? All of you were dancing, and there was dialogue and resistance. We didn't resist last 24 hours. But it seemed that you said there was kind of trauma and recovery, but resistance was kind of this mediating notion through it. So I was just curious in terms of, maybe that might answer, for those who are confused or not, that last piece, which was very playful. I mean, there's a kind of way in which there's a reaffirmation of life, you know, the kind of, I would love to hear more in terms of the concept behind how kind of resistance through dance perhaps is a medium of recovery.
So I think I'll answer that question with the second piece that you saw, because that is like it is a resistance piece. It's based in a rhythm and ritual called Petwo, which is very much like directly related to the Haitian Revolution, like dead on. And so I use that piece because one of the things that I didn't mention answering Pappy's, Yasmin's question is that I try to give myself sort of creative space by framing each piece as the moment that you recognize that trauma exists, the moment that you decide to fight that trauma, which leads to the moment of recovery. And so resistance then for me is that entire decision to say, I'm not going to let this beat me down. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to figure out what to do. I'm going to figure out how to just be and have that be okay. And so that's how resistance plays a part into it, which then the last piece, it does tie to the last piece, but the last piece is a little bit left field just because it's not based on any type of traditional dance. It's more me attempting to invite you into my bedroom, which is where I find my recovery, is to play music really loud and to do my own thing. And so the people who were with me on stage were actually doing their best at representing the things in my room, the inanimate objects in my room. Huh?
Yeah, great job, everyone. You're so powerful. I feel like there's a motif in all the questions somehow related to spaces. And I was just wondering how cognizant were you of, I feel like because one of the first pieces you talked about sacred space. I don't know if you can hear me end up. At the end you talk about dancing in the same space also. And to me, I see the room thing, but I also think like a sort of community thing. Like wondering where you're cognizant of Williams and like, especially dance spaces sometimes being very dramatic as well. Was that something playing into it? And also, how cognizant were you of that in the elements of it? Like you can see the community, but like maybe the dancers could answer that what we think in terms of like using space and playing space.
I'll let them answer it, but I'll answer it first. Just I was very cognizant of it, extremely, because I'm referring to spaces that are like Williams as traumatic, because this is where I've had my experience. I'm having the dance studio in the dance studio as the space that I perform, because this is the space that I came to. This is the space that I continue to come to as a part of Kusika and as a part of this is it for me. And I would say there are a lot of layers of it, but I have thought of every space. I have tried to figure out a way to bring spaces that are not here, so that you can see them. That was one of my biggest attempts. Does anyone else have anything about cleaning spaces you want to add?
Well, I don't know if you could tell, I was the broom. I was sweeping. For me, I asked to be the broom because usually, for some reason, I just like the sound of the broom. I don't really like using a vacuum. I clean when I am going through a lot. I clean because it's something that's like, it's a rhythm to sweeping, and it kind of calms all of the mind clutter. And I guess in the space where I was sweeping, I felt like, you know, I was clearing away everything that was, you know, I'm dealing with. And during this process, I know we probably all had our, you know, ups and downs or whatever. So I guess I also use this space as a place to come and not only rehearse or, you know, be with Sandy, be with Kusika or whoever I'm working with, but it's also a calming place. I feel like when I'm at home, I'm there with everything that's bothering me. And so kind of going, I think, Laurel, did you ask about being in other spaces or dancing in other spaces? I really like that we were on that big rock because I've definitely sat on a rock and just tried to clear my mind whenever things are coming at me at once, because I feel like if I'm in a room, I'm too closed in, whereas if I'm outside, then I'm able to, you know, stretch or do whatever I need to just sort of like brush off everything. Even if it's just temporary, it's better to do it in an open space, because even open spaces can offer you, or me, the type of intimacy that I need in order to just be, if that makes sense. So.
Can I just say, I would love to offer that I think you did something really precious and important with all of you. You reminded me, at least, that the most sacred space is always the space that we move with, which is our body and our breath. And that you can be here, you can be there, you can be in Haiti, you can be in New York City, you can be anywhere in that sacred space is your home always. So thank you for that. That's important.
So first up, that's thank you. And I understand that this whole thing also speaks of this journey to bring the piece of the life together, to, you know, the heritage of education and being in one time. And I want to know, when you look back to it, what do you mean for you as a woman? That part plays into the whole, you know, corporation, you know, the whole journey.
That's a really good question, because I don't think I've ever thought about it. And I would say that I've never thought about it because that's a good question. I really have not thought about that question. It just hasn't been something that, like, was in, like, I don't know. I've never thought about it. For me, it's like when I'm moving, I'm existing, and so it's just not a thing that I've ever thought about. It's not something that I just haven't given that much thought. Can you find me, like, before we leave? But I will say that, like, there's something about this piece that reads off as masculine a lot, especially in the rhythm. The Pitbull dance is, like, really, it reads off as very masculine, but it doesn't exist that way in its nature. Whereas, you know, Doto, who's sitting over there, can speak to Pitbull for you, that she is Pitbull, but she's a woman, and she embodies that thing, but that's her thing. Like, I feel like she should get it tattooed on her, you know? And so it's not something that I've given much thought, because it just hasn't occurred to me that that's something that I should probably talk about. It's probably really bad, but I just haven't.
Only one example I can say. I'm from Haiti. To come here 23 years old by yourself, without your family. And it's now I realize when I came here, I'm a faithful woman. Because faithful is like you in the world without nobody, you have to fight to survive. Fight not right now like killing people.
fight on a good way to survive. And it's like, when I'm here, when I came here, every only thing I feel like I can do is like dancing. When I'm dancing the paper, I say, okay, tomorrow I have to look for a job. Tomorrow I have to go to school because I'm speaking English. I have to fight to do this. I have to fight to do that. And when I'm on the street, I'm a paper woman. When I get home, the first piece is like we young value. It's like, okay, on our little spaces, we home, we safe. That's a good thing about our culture. The song, the dance, like she said before, we can be any places in the whole world and we feel like we home. That's the reason I like people.
Is this question, is this the last question? What time is it? Okay, yes, this is the last question. Go ahead.
Right, yeah. When you're doing the part where Anita is suffering, I just want to know what your thought process.
And also talk about that moment that never happened before.
My thought process. So, before I got here, I did liturgical dance, which is, if you're like black and you go to black churches, you know it's just like praise dancers is what you do in like African American black churches. So evoking emotion through dance was something I was used to. Connecting with God through dance is something that I was used to, and like expressing that was something I was accustomed to. But what Bureau made me do was express what I was thinking, not even thinking, that's the wrong word, what I was feeling, what I was not acknowledging myself, what I was not acknowledging that I was feeling through the dance, which is not even something, if you know me, that I do in my day-to-day life. Those are my other two best friends over there, they can attest. So, I try to go back to my lowest place when I was here, and also connecting with the ways that that lowest place resurfaces in my day-to-day life, because when we go through trauma and we recover, it's not necessarily, I'm coasting, I'm cool. There are days when you're reminded, there are days when you feel people watching and it takes you back to those places. So I tried to bring all of that into this space and to share it with you all. But it's funny to ask me what I was thinking, because I was talking to Sandy about this yesterday. We were trying to practice. I was like, Sandy, I don't like to practice this because I want it to be organic. And she was like, well, you know, you need to find a phrase to set you in that place, set you in that moment. And so the phrase that I was thinking as I was outside ignoring people, as I was in here walking in, was, you've lost her because you changed.
And just to clarify, that never happened before. Yeah. She's never cried before. That just happened today, and she danced through it. So I feel like we need a round of applause. Thank you all for coming. I think that's the last question. Yes. So thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.